FBI finds new evidence linking Jay-Z and Diddy to Tupac's shocking case. Now, so here's the part they never put on the record. Tupac Shakur was never supposed to be a martyr. He was supposed to be a megastar. But somewhere between the bullets in Vegas and the ashes that nobody ever saw, the story flipped. And now, decades later, the FBI is back in the picture, slapping new files down like cards in a high-stakes game where the stakes are reputation, legacy, and billion-dollar empire. The spotlight's no longer just on Diddy. It's swinging to Jay-Z, to Beyonce, and even to the possibility that Tupac never actually left. You've got to understand how strange it is to hear the name Shakur pop up over 7,000 times in federal documents. That's not a coincidence. That's obsession. When that obsession is coming from the FBI, it means they were chasing something they couldn't let go. Not a random beef or street vendetta, but a puzzle they were never able to solve until maybe now. And it all leads back to one insane idea. What if every Tupac conspiracy had a little bit of truth in it? Not the YouTube tinfoil stuff, but the whispers, the staged drive-by, the conflicting autopsy reports, the missing witnesses, the that never felt quite finished. People say nobody ever saw his body, like it's a joke, but what if it's not? What if Tupac played dead because he saw what was coming? Because here's what was coming: Diddy, Jay-Z. A power shift in the music industry so smooth and brutal, it makes a chess game look like checkers. Right after Tupac and Biggie were taken out of the picture, the two men who were supposed to be on the ropes came out untouched and richer than ever. Diddy caught up in a club shooting? Nothing sticks. Jay-Z stabbed a guy in Manhattan? Charges dropped. Then they're back on stage, back in boardrooms, launching businesses, climbing Forbes lists. If there was a war, they didn't just survive it, they inherited everything. But nobody talks about that part. We're told to believe it was all random. Bad timing, wrong place, unfortunate beef. That's the clean version. But now, with lawsuits piling up against Diddy, with Jay-Z's name showing up in civil suits next to his, and with Beyonce sitting quietly at the table like none of it touches her, the clean version is cracking. Back in the day, there was talk that Diddy had a bounty on Tupac's head, that he paid someone to handle it. That talk came from guys who aren't guessing, they were there. And then you've got Keefe D sitting in jail now, contradicting his own memoirs, shifting blame, muddying waters. Why? Because whatever really happened that night in Vegas still scares people, not just street fear, career-ending, empire-collapsing fear. The FBI files, they don't laugh off the idea that Tupac's still alive. In fact, for years, they took it seriously. They treated the Shakur is alive theory the same way they treat organized crime and terrorism leads. Why? Because there were too many weird details, too many inconsistencies. The autopsy report, wrong height, wrong weight. The man who handled the cremation, vanished. Tupac's own lyrics sound like he was plotting an escape, and the timing, almost surgical. Shakur goes down in September. Biggie gets hit 6 months later. Suddenly, the field is wide open, and two men walk through the smoke untouched. Not just alive, but rising. By the time the dust settles, Diddy and Jay-Z are shaking hands on stage, building brands, launching clothing lines, getting knighted by corporate America. That's not just luck, that's power. And if Tupac saw that power coming for him, if he knew he couldn't beat it, maybe disappearing was the only move he had left on the board. Maybe the final act wasn't death, it was escape. And if that's true, the game isn't over. It's just been paused, waiting for the king to reappear. Look at how the industry moved after Shakur was gone. Labels that were bleeding cash suddenly started printing money. The so-called East Coast versus West Coast war evaporated, and in its place, a new wave of polished, media-trained moguls who knew exactly how to navigate power, not just lyrics. Jay-Z and Diddy weren't just making music, they were restructuring the entire playing field. Boardroom deals replaced street loyalty, conflict was no longer personal, it was product. You've gotta ask, how did these two rise so cleanly through such dirty chaos? And more importantly, who benefited from the silence that followed Shakur and Biggie's death? Because silence is a product too. It's sold when people stop asking questions, and nothing keeps questions quiet like money, influence, and access. That's what Jay-Z and Diddy mastered, locking doors behind them after walking through. There's this picture everyone's seen, Jay-Z and Diddy grinning side by side at some gala, champagne glasses up, suits on point. But you don't build billion-dollar empires on friendship alone. What people in the business call brotherhood, others call strategic alignment. Some even say they were less partners and more gatekeepers, deciding who rose, who fell, who got a verse, and who got vanished. And then there's Beyonce. For years, she's been considered untouchable, the golden face of the industry. But there's no way you orbit that level of power without understanding the gravity of it. She came up surrounded by these men, collaborating with them, touring with them, standing on award stages beside them. When Beyonce released her early solo perk, both Jay-Z and Diddy were right there, smiling, supporting, but maybe they weren't just helping her rise, they were making sure she knew where the boundaries were. Because silence is not just self-preservation, it's protection of the entire machine. When those lawsuits dropped, naming Diddy and hinting at Jay-Z's involvement in some seriously dark allegations, Beyonce didn't flinch. No posts, no statements, not even a vague Instagram caption. Just flawless PR silence, like it was rehearsed. Now people whisper, did she know more than she let on? Was she coached early on about which doors to open and which ones to never look behind? Some say her rise was the trade-off, the crown in exchange for silence. And if that's true, it changes everything. She's no longer just a bystander, she's the thread that ties it all together. Then come the rumors that never quite die. The theory that Aaliyah, once seen as the future queen of R&B, was moved out of the way so Beyonce could ascend. That her fatal flight wasn't just tragic timing, but engineered. The name mentioned in hushed circles, Sean Carter, Jay-Z, the same man who would later marry Beyonce and help transform her into a global icon. It's a stretch, sure, but in this world, the more far-fetched something sounds, the more people lean in. The public sees red carpets and tour announcements. What they don't see are the contracts, the NDAs, the buried stories, and buried with them might be pieces of the truth. Tupac was warning about this generation before they even arrived. Rappers raised by marketing departments, legends traded for brand deals, culture swapped for clicks. If the rumors about his disappearance are even partially true, then maybe that was the point: to disappear, to survive, and to one day return not with vengeance, but with receipts. What if the industry's most polished faces are hiding the messiest truths? What if the calm was always a cover, the silence a strategy? Because behind the fame, behind the stage lights, there's always been something darker humming underneath, and now that buzz is getting louder. The tension isn't just in the courtrooms or in dusty FBI files, it's in the air now. It's in every unearthed photo, every leaked voicemail, every interview where someone suddenly clams up mid-sentence. Diddy's facing the heat from every direction. Accusations stacking up, former allies disappearing, lawsuits pointing to a past that won't stay buried. And Jay-Z, he's been silent. Too silent. No denials, no distancing, just calculated stillness. That's not the reaction of an innocent bystander. That's the stillness of someone waiting to see how bad the fire gets before speaking. Meanwhile, the stories are shifting from speculation to pattern. People are connecting dots that used to seem too far apart. Diddy's infamous freak-off parties, whispered about in studio corners and industry brunches, are now under legal scrutiny. And the claims? They aren't just about private behavior. They're about power, coercion, and control. About the way people got pulled in and the consequences for trying to leave. If those tapes exist, and some sources say they do, they wouldn't just blow up reputations, they'd nuke careers, destroy brands, and force billion-dollar companies to explain how they looked away for so long. Then there's Jay-Z standing just outside the blast zone, but his name keeps showing up, always adjacent, always connected. Not directly accused, but never far enough to be safe. The stories hint at complicity, that he knew, that he helped, that he signed off on decisions decisions with consequences deeper than any lyric ever admitted. And now, with old collaborators dodging subpoenas and former bodyguards turning up with no comment interviews, the narrative is collapsing in real time. But the most dangerous variable isn't even alive in the headlines yet. It's the ghost, the one name they still whisper like it's a curse or a prophecy: Tupac Shakur. Because if there's even a shred of truth to the theory that he faked his if he actually did disappear under some kind of federal protection, then everything changes. The story isn't about revenge anymore. It's about exposure. Every sighting, every blurry image from Cuba or New Orleans or Malaysia becomes a clue. Every old interview where Pac talked about betrayal or chess moves or dying before 30 suddenly sounds like strategy, not poetry, not paranoia, planning. Because this wasn't just about beef. It was about empire. Tupac didn't just rap about enemies in the streets, he warned about snakes in the suits, about power structures masked as record labels, about artists being used up and discarded while a select few rose untouched. If Shakur ever steps out of the shadows, even for one moment, one press conference, one video, one live stream, it's not just Diddy and Jay-Z who fall. The entire structure cracks. Brands implode. Contracts become evidence. Everyone who smiled and posed with the gatekeepers has to choose a side. And Beyonce, the industry's most protected queen, she'd be under the same spotlight. Not for what she did, but for what she knew and how long she chose not to say it. There's a reason the whispers haven't died. It's because the story never ended. It just got quiet. But silence isn't peace, it's pressure building, and right now, every document unsealed, every lawsuit filed, every shaky denial is another signal that the truth is coming. Maybe slow, maybe violent, but it's coming, and when it breaks, the music industry as we know it won't just be shaken, it'll be revealed. Curtain pulled back, names named, legends unmasked, and standing at the center of it all, whether alive or just legacy immortal, will be Tupac. The one man they couldn't erase, the one story they never controlled, and maybe, just maybe, the one voice that still has the power to burn it all down.